Good morning, one and all. Myself, Professor SRINIVAS from St. Joseph Degree and PG College, Hyderabad. So today I'm going to discuss some of the concepts related to research. What do you mean by the research? Research is an in-depth study which is used to identify the problem or to provide the solution. The research is divided into two types. The one is called basic research, which is also called as fundamental research. Applied research, which is also called as pure research. The basic research, which is used to identify the problem. The applied research, which is used to solve the problem or provide the solution. As per the standard definition, research is the process of systematic identification, collection of the data, analysis, dissemination, interpretation, reporting the data pertaining to the business problems in order to provide the solution. These researches are categorized into exploratory research, descriptive research, causal research. So these are the three types of the research designs. What do you mean by the research design? Research design is a blueprint or framework which consists of tools and techniques to conduct the research. Exploratory research, which is going to identify the insights of the problem. Descriptive research. So descriptive research is the research which is going to define or identify the characteristics, each and every characteristics of the object. Causal research, which explains the relationship between the cause and effect. In order to conduct the research process, we require different 8 steps. The first step is defining the problem. So what is a problem? It can be a need, it can be a requirement, it can be a competition. Second point, determine the research design. The identified problem comes under either exploratory research, descriptive research, or causal research. So that's why we need to determine the research design. Third one, identify the data sources. So data sources are two types. The one is called primary data, second one is called secondary data. Fourth one, identify the data collection techniques. Data can be collected through survey method, which includes questionnaire method, interview method, observation method. Next one is called experiment method. So these are the techniques we are going to use in order to collect the data. Either observation method, interview method, questionnaire method, experiment method. So these are the methods we are going to identify the data collection techniques. Next point, define the population. This is very, very important in the research. Defining the population is very, very important. Right objective, right audience, right city, right place, right country. Determine the data sampling technique. Sample size is also very, very important. Population is nothing but total universe. It's very difficult in the research within the given time. It's very difficult to conclude. It's very difficult to identify the problem. In that particular case, sampling is a technique which is a part of the population, which is going to represent the total universe. So sampling techniques are divided into probability, non-probability sampling, which is also called as random and non-random sampling techniques. So when it comes to probability or random sampling techniques, we have simple random sampling technique, systematic random sampling technique, cluster sampling technique, stratified random sampling technique. These are some of the important sampling techniques. When it comes to non-random and non-probability sampling techniques, quota sampling, convenience sampling, judgment sampling, snowball sampling. These sampling techniques are very, very important. Sample size also very, very important. So determination of the sample size is also very, very important because sample size which represent the total universe. In order to find out the sample size, There's a two techniques. The one is the qualitative techniques, other one is the quantitative techniques. These are the two techniques. Next step is nothing but tabulation of the data. Tabulation of the data is very, very important. Coding the data is very, very important. Analysis of the data is very, very important. For the analysis, interpretation of the data also very, very important. Different tools and techniques we are supposed to apply in order to get the derived solution. The last step, reporting, is very, very important. After doing the entire research, we need to communicate the outcome with the interested parties. This is what very, very important. The next part is very, very important in the research: data. What is data? Data is collection of raw and facts. So this data you need to process. When you process the data, it will become the information. So first of all, data collection techniques are very, very important. What are the different types of the data collection techniques? As I told you, when you want to collect the data, there's a two process. The one is called primary source of collection of data, secondary source of collection of data. What is primary data? The first end data is called primary data. The data which is not readily available and which also requires some time. The cost is also involved. So this kind of the data is nothing but primary data. So primary data can be collected from the internal sources as well as external sources. How can you collect the primary data from the internal sources? From the internal sources, good example, every year, every company is going to release the reports, annual reports. So this particular report is prepared according to the Companies Act. Every company needs to prepare the reports. They need to disclose all the important this information to all the investors, all the customers, society. So that's what primary information. You can get it through companies in terms of internal reports. Example, marketing reports, sales report, financial reports, etc. So what is the data, primary data? How can you collect it from the outside the organization? Very good example, end user survey method. Collecting the data from the end user, who is nothing but the customer. You will be collecting this data first time through interview method or survey method. What is that? Questionnaire method. So these are the two techniques which you are going to use in order to collect the data. Second one is called secondary data. What is the secondary data? Secondary data is the data which is collected from the various sources. The data is which is already available in the market. The data which you are going to collect it from the internet, which you are going to collect it from the books, reports, which is already available into the market. Very good example in the library data. Syndicated organizations who will publish the data every annual, trimester data, semester data, annually, off yearly, you understand? All this kind of the data, secondary data, which is freely available. So this data is called as secondary data. The very important point after the data techniques and data collection techniques are very, very important after the data sources. What are the data collection techniques? As I told you, interview method is one of the technique, very important technique, and there is two types of interviews. One is called structured interview, unstructured interview, direct interview, indirect interview, questionnaire method. Third one is called observation method. Fourth one is called experiment method. So these are the data collection techniques. When it comes to the next technique is called sampling technique. As I told you, sampling techniques are divided into probability sampling techniques and non-probability sampling techniques, or which can be also called as random sampling techniques and non-random sampling techniques. So probability sampling techniques are nothing but simple random sampling technique, systematic random sampling technique, cluster sampling technique, stratified random sampling techniques. When it comes to non-probability, non-random sampling techniques, which is also called as quota sampling technique, judgment sampling techniques, snowball sampling techniques, convenience sampling techniques. After this, scaling the data is very, very important. So that's what scales are very, very important. What is called as how many types of the scales? What is called as the scale? Scale is nothing but assigning the symbols and numbers to the characteristics of any object by following the specific rule is called as the scale. How many types of scales we have? The one is called physical scale. The other one is called abstract scale. What is called as the physical scale? Physical scale is the scale which is going to measure characteristics of the objects, height, weight, length, etc., which are divided into nominal scale, which is also called as simple scale. Nominal scale is nothing but in order to identify the object, you're going to assign the number or symbol. You cannot use this nominal scale in calculations. Second scale is called ordinal scale. Ordinal scale is a scale which is going to rank the objects. Third one is called interval scale. Interval scale is a scale which lies between the upper limit and the lower limit. Fourth one is called ratio scale, which is very, very important. This scale is going to give the accurate, exact 0-point values, accurate values, which possesses all the characteristics of the previous scales. When it comes to abstract scales, the scales which is used to measure the likes and dislikes of the customers. And so out of this, scaling techniques are very, very important. There is two types of scaling techniques. One is called comparative rating scaling techniques, non-comparative rating scaling techniques. What is called as the comparative rating scaling techniques? Comparative rating scaling technique is a technique which is going to compare the characteristics of the one object with the characteristics of the other object. Good examples. I'll tell you some of the models of these comparative scaling techniques. Paired comparison method, constant sum scaling technique, ranking order scale, Q-sort scale. When it comes to non-comparative rating scaling techniques or scale, which also attitude scales, these are Likert scale, semantic differentiational scale, staple scale. Likert scale is the scale which is going to measure the characteristics of any object from strongly agree to strongly disagree. This scale also called as 5-point rating scale. Second scale we'll call it as semantic differentiational scale. This scale is called bipolar scale, which is also called as 5-point rating scale, which always lies between -3 to +3. So this is called bipolar. Let us take good example of the taste, high taste and the low taste. So these are the two kinds of things which is going to find out. That's what this scale is going to measure, two variants. The one is high and the low. That's what it is called bipolar scale. Third scale is the scale which is called as staple scale, which is called as unipolar scale, which is consist of -5 to +5. The characteristics will be placed between -5 and the +5. This is called as unipolar scale. When it comes to next topic, decision theory. Decisions are very, very important. What is called as the decision making? Decision making is nothing but selecting the best alternative among the available alternatives. Why decision making is important? Every business, there's a T levels of the people will be there in the company. One is the top level managers, they'll be taking the strategic decisions. Middle level managers, they're going to take administrative decisions. The lower level managers, they'll be taking up the operational decisions. Let us take, when you talk about the top level managers, who will always take a strategic decisions, which includes an example, forward integration and the backward integration. All strategic decisions, business expansion decisions, mergers, acquisitions, turnaround, all these kinds of the decisions will be taken by the upper level. That's called top level managers. Middle level managers, always they need to take an administrative decisions. Good example for the middle level managers, we have marketing managers, HR managers, production managers, quality managers. All these types of the managers are called middle level managers. Low level managers are the managers who will have the complete eye on the day-to-day operations. They always take care about the day-to-day operations. So these managers are called operational managers who always take care about the business. Yeah. So now, why this particular decision theory is important? Obviously, all these types of the managers need to take the decisions under the different types of the situations. So what are the different types of the situations we'll discuss right now? The one situation, all the business decisions are involved under the situations, under the criteria like certainty conditions, uncertainty condition, risk conditions, and conflict conditions. What is called as the certainty? Certainty is nothing but you can always predict. Let us take, you want to invest some money. You know the return also. Very good example, the fixed deposit. When you are depositing the amount right now, you know what is the return you are going to get after 5 years. This is called as a certainty condition. Sometimes the decision making under uncertainty, it's very difficult to understand uncertainty. Always you need to predict. The probability come to the picture. Uncertainty conditions. Uncertainty is very, very difficult, definitely, because you know input but you don't know output. But how to identify this? You will be applying certain models that's called as a optimistic criteria, pessimistic criteria, Laplace method, Hurwitz alpha method, regret method. So these are the techniques which you're going to use under the uncertainty model. The other one is called decision making under risk. This is very difficult. You don't know what is input and what is the output. Definitely you need to guess. Probability, that is the chance of success and chance of failure. That's what here you're going to use 3 concepts. The one is called EMV, expected monetary value, EOL, expected opportunity loss, expected value of perfect information. These are the techniques. When it comes to the last concept under the decision theory, which is nothing but decision tree. And decision tree is a tree which is consist of the nodes. So with the decision tree also you're going to solve. So the multiple alternatives and multiple problems, you're going to solve the problem. Very good example you discussed in the conflict situation. You know game theory, which can be solved by the principles of dominance method. The payoff matrix method, that is nothing but the value of the game. Saddles method, principles of dominance method. So these are the techniques under the conflict. Next, coming to the non-parametric test. And the test includes Mann-Whitney test, Wilcoxon test, Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, run test for randomness, McNemer test. All these kinds of the concept which comes under the non-parametric test. Because you cannot find out any kind of the parameters like standard deviation, mean, variance, etc. So these tests are very, very important when the data is assumed data, which you collected from the market. That's what in marketing research, most of the people will be adapting this kind of the concept called non-parametric data, which includes, I said, Mann-Whitney, McNemer, Wilcoxon, Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, run test for randomness, which also includes large sample and small sample case. This includes non-parametric concepts. The last concept is called multivariate analysis. This is very, very important. Multivariate analysis, you're not going to concentrating on the one variable. 2 or more variables you want to analyze. That's what this multivariate analysis comes into the picture. This multivariate analysis is also going to analyze the data based on the metric data and non-metric data. Metric data is always in a quantitative data. Non-metric data is always in a qualitative data. The concept includes the concept called regression analysis, correlation analysis. Correlation analysis which explains the relationship between the 2 variables. Regression analysis is the analysis which is going to explain the relationship between the 1 dependent variables, 2 or more independent variables. This is called multiple regression analysis. Similarly, we have the discriminant analysis, which is going to explain the relationship between the categorical variables and the dependent variable. Cluster analysis, coincident analysis, multi-dimensional scaling techniques, factor analysis. So these are the excellent techniques which are very, very important when it comes to the research. The other last topic is also very, very important. It's called reporting. Report is very, very important. As I mentioned earlier, after doing the research, the final data you need to communicate with the interested parties. That's what 2 reports plays an important role. The one is called oral report, the other one is called the written report. Written report is very powerful, which is consists of the 2 parts. The one is called preliminary pages, body, and conclusion pages. Thank you very much. Signing off.